The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute professional financial, legal, or career advice. Scholarship criteria, deadlines, and availability are subject to change based on the discretion of the awarding institutions. While we strive for accuracy based on historical trends and current data, viewers are strictly advised to conduct their own due diligence and consult with official university financial aid offices or certified educational consultants before making any financial commitments. The creators of this content are not responsible for any personal outcomes resulting from the application of these strategies. The American dream of a college degree is officially being held hostage by a $1.7 trillion ransom note. While you are told that a degree is the only path to the middle class, the math tells a much darker story. Right now, the average cost of attendance at a private four-year university in the United States has climbed to over $55,000 per year, including tuition, room, and board. If you follow the traditional path of taking out federal and private loans, you aren't just buying an education. You are signing away your 30s, your 40s, and potentially your ability to ever own a home. But here is the controversial truth that the trillion-dollar student loan industry doesn't want you to focus on. Every single year, an estimated $100 million in scholarship money goes completely unclaimed. Not because the money isn't there, but because the average applicant is looking in the wrong places, using the wrong strategies, and giving up before they even understand the game. This is not a summary. This is not a list of tips you can find on a generic blog. This is part 1 of a 10-part deep dive masterclass designed to dismantle the barriers between you and a debt-free education. Today, we are solving the fundamental problem of access. We are going to look at why the current system is designed to favor the informed over the talented, and I will show you the exact historical trends that prove you don't need a 4.0 GPA or a perfect SAT score to secure 6 figures in funding. We are going to break down the specific scholarship vehicles that are open right now and provide a step-by-step framework for building a profile that institutions find impossible to ignore. To understand where the money is, we first have to understand the sheer scale of the crisis we are fighting. In 1980, the average cost of tuition, fees, and room and board for an undergraduate degree was roughly $3,350 per year. Adjusted for inflation, that would be about $10,200 today. Instead, the actual cost is more than double that at public institutions and 5 times that at private ones. The gap between what families can afford and what colleges demand has created a vacuum. This vacuum is filled by 2 things: crippling debt or strategic scholarship acquisition. Case studies of successful applicants from the previous academic cycle show a distinct pattern. These students did not simply apply to everything. They understood the 3-tier architecture of U.S. funding: federal aid, institutional aid, and private foundations. Tier 1. The foundation of institutional merit. Most students make the mistake of looking for external scholarships before they look at the university's own coffers. Institutional aid is where the largest sums of money reside. This is money given directly by the college to attract specific types of students. Historical trends show that tuition discounting is at an all-time high. In recent years, private colleges have provided an average institutional tuition discount rate of nearly 54% for first-time, full-time students. This means that the sticker price you see on a university website is often a fiction. For example, consider a university with a $60,000 tuition. A student with a strong profile in a specific niche, perhaps an underrepresented geographic location or a specific extracurricular skill, might receive a merit award of $30,000 automatically upon acceptance. This isn't based on financial need. It is a strategic business move by the college to diversify its cohort. To capitalize on this, you must analyze the common data set of your target schools. The Common Data Set is a standardized document where universities report their admissions and financial aid statistics. If you look at Section C, you can see exactly how much weight a school puts on level of applicants' interest versus academic GPA. If a school highly values demonstrated interest, your path to a scholarship involves engaging with their webinars, visiting the campus, and emailing department heads. These actions move you up the internal ranking system, triggering higher merit-based offers. Tier 2. The power of private foundations. Beyond the university walls lie the private foundations. This is where the $100 million in unclaimed aid usually sits. The mistake here is the big name trap. Everyone applies to the Coca-Cola Scholars Program or the Gates Scholarship. While these are life-changing, they are also statistically harder to get into than Harvard. The strategy we will be exploring involves niche stacking. Instead of spending 40 hours on one application for a $20,000 scholarship with 100,000 applicants, historical data suggests it is more effective to spend 40 hours on 20 applications for $1,000 scholarships with only 50 applicants each. This is a volume game based on specific identity and skill markers. Consider the left-handed scholarship myth. While that specific one is rare, the reality of micro-niche funding is very real. There are scholarships specifically for students who are descendants of specific military regiments, students who have a documented interest in the chemistry of sourdough bread, or students who live in a specific zip code in rural Ohio. Step-by-step micro-niche identification. The Heritage Audit. Document every branch of your family tree. Many fraternal organizations like the Elks Lodge or the Knights of Columbus offer scholarships to children and grandchildren of members. The professional alignment. If you want to be a civil engineer, do not just look for engineering scholarships. Look for the American Society of Civil Engineers local chapter awards. These often have very few applicants because they require a specific membership or an essay on a local infrastructure project. The employer hack. If you or your parents work for a mid to large-sized corporation, check the HR manual. Companies like Starbucks, Walmart, and UPS offer significant tuition reimbursement or direct scholarship grants that are often overlooked by employees who assume they don't qualify. Tier 3. The federal and state layer. We cannot discuss scholarships without mentioning the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. This is the gatekeeper. Even if you believe your family earns too much to qualify for need-based aid, many merit-based scholarships require a FAFSA on file to even consider you. Potential outcomes for those who skip the FAFSA are almost universally negative. Without it, you are ineligible for the Pell Grant, which provides up to several $1,000s in free money that never needs to be repaid. Furthermore, state-specific grants like the Cal Grant in California or the Hope Scholarship in Georgia are tied directly to this data. Historical trends in state funding show that states are increasingly moving toward last dollar programs. A last dollar scholarship covers the remaining balance of your tuition after all other grants and scholarships have been applied. If your tuition is $10,000 and you get $6,000 from a Pell Grant and $2,000 from a private source, the last dollar state grant picks up the final $2,000. This effectively makes college tuition free. The hook methodology. How to stand out. To win in any of these tiers, you need a hook. In the world of high-stakes admissions and scholarships, being well-rounded is a disadvantage. If you are a 4.0 student who plays piano, plays soccer, and volunteers at a soup kitchen, you are identical to 50,000 other applicants. Case studies of scholarship winners show that the T-shaped profile is far more effective. This means you have a broad base of knowledge but one deep vertical spike in a specific area. Example: instead of volunteering at a soup kitchen, a T-shaped student identifies a specific inefficiency in the soup kitchen supply chain and creates a software solution or a local partnership to reduce food waste by 30%. The result? You aren't just a volunteer. You are a social entrepreneur with a focus on logistics. That title alone opens doors to specialized leadership scholarships that the well-rounded student will never see. We are just scratching the surface of this ecosystem. In the next parts of this masterclass, we will deep dive into the specific deadlines for this year, the exact essay prompts that are winning the most money right now, and how to negotiate your financial aid package after you've already been accepted. Remember, the cost of college is not a fixed reality. It is a starting point for a negotiation that you are currently losing because you don't know the rules. By the time we finish this 10-part series, you will have the tools to turn that $1.7 trillion crisis into your own personal competitive advantage. To understand the urgency of this moment, we have to look at the 2026 academic calendar. If you are watching this right now, you are already in the middle of a high-stakes auction where the currency is your personal narrative and your timing. Let's look at a case study involving a student named Marcus, a high school senior in Chicago. Marcus is a talented student, but like many in 2026, he is facing an annual tuition bill of $78,000 at his dream private university. His parents, both middle-class professionals, earn too much to qualify for significant federal need-based aid, but not nearly enough to write a check for $312,000 over 4 years. Marcus represents the squeezed middle of the American economy. However, Marcus utilized a strategy we call the early velocity method. Historical trends in scholarship disbursements show that 60% of private foundation money is allocated or earmarked before the spring of the senior year even begins. While his peers were waiting for their acceptance letters in March, Marcus had already secured $45,000 in outside funding by December. He didn't do this by being a genius. He did it by understanding the scholarship life cycle. Imagine if you could look inside the mind of a scholarship committee member in 2026. These committees are no longer just looking at transcripts. In the current era of AI-generated essays and inflated GPAs, committees are looking for what we call verifiable proof of impact. They are looking for the receipts. When Marcus applied for the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation Scholarship, he didn't just write about his interest in urban planning. He submitted a digital portfolio showing a community garden project he spearheaded that used IoT sensors to optimize water usage in his neighborhood. This project solved a tangible problem, and more importantly, it was verifiable through local news clippings and a project website. The potential outcomes for students who shift from being applicants to being problem solvers are statistically much higher. The Jack Kent Cooke Foundation is one of the heavy hitters we need to discuss in depth. Historically, this program looks for students with significant financial need, who have also demonstrated a high level of persistence. In 2026, they are specifically looking for students who can bridge the gap between academic theory and community application. If you are applying for this, your narrative must center on how you have overcome a specific localized challenge. The scholarship can provide up to $55,000 per year, which, when stacked with institutional aid, often results in a full ride plus a stipend for living expenses. But let's pivot to the Gates Scholarship. This is a highly competitive last-dollar scholarship for outstanding, minority, high school seniors from low-income households. The historical data on Gates Scholars shows that the committee prioritizes leadership and personal success skills. In the 2026 cycle, leadership is defined differently than it was a decade ago. It is no longer about being the president of the chess club. It is about influence and mobilization. Case studies of recent winners show that they often have a digital footprint that demonstrates they can lead a movement, even a small one. Step by step, if you are targeting the Gates Scholarship or the Coca-Cola Scholars Program this year, you need to conduct a digital audit. Start by searching your own name. What does a committee see? If they see a blank slate, you are a risk. If they see a documented history of your involvement in your chosen niche, you are a safe investment. For the Coca-Cola Scholars Program, which awards 150 scholarships of $20,000 each annually, the initial application is a simple online form. However, the winnowing process is brutal. Out of nearly 100,000 applicants, only a fraction move to the semi-finalist stage where the real work begins. Historical trends indicate that the Coca-Cola Committee leans heavily on the breadth of your impact. They want to see that you haven't just succeeded in a vacuum but that you have elevated those around you. This is why we recommend the Peer Elevation Framework. In your descriptions, you should not use I statements exclusively. Instead, describe how your actions created opportunities for others. For example, instead of saying I started a tutoring program, say I established a tutoring network that currently serves 150 students and has recruited 20 student volunteers to ensure sustainability after I graduate. This shifts the focus from your ego to your organizational capacity. Beyond these national giants, we need to talk about the 2026 trend of corporate pipeline scholarships. Companies like Amazon, Google, and Lockheed Martin have realized that the talent war starts in high school. The Amazon Future Engineer Scholarship, for instance, provides $40,000 over 4 years plus a paid internship after the freshman year. This is a double win. Not only is your tuition covered, but your career path is effectively de-risked. Case studies of recipients show that the internship experience often leads to a full-time job offer, with a starting salary well above the national average. To secure these, your application must reflect the corporate values of the sponsor. Amazon values bias for action and ownership. If your essay describes a time you waited for permission, you will likely be rejected. If it describes a time you saw a gap and moved to fill it without being asked, you are speaking their language. The data shows that students who align their personal brand with the corporate culture of the scholarship provider have a significantly higher success rate than those who send out a generic, one-size-fits-all personal statement. Now let's address the elephant in the room: the essay. In 2026, the standard 5-paragraph essay is dead. Scholarship committees are being flooded with AI-generated content that sounds perfect but feels hollow. To stand out, you must use the vulnerability to victory arc. This isn't about a sob story. A sob story without a solution is a red flag for committees who are looking for resilience. You must identify a specific point of friction in your life, describe the internal and external resources you use to navigate it, and most importantly, explain what you learned that you can now apply to your college career. Imagine if you were the person reading 500 essays a day. By essay number 400, you are looking for a reason to say no. Don't give them one. Avoid cliches like "I want to change the world" or "I am a hard worker." Instead, use specific data. Instead of saying "I am a hard worker," say "I balanced a 3.8 GPA with a 25-hour-a-week job at a local pharmacy while managing my household's grocery budget." That is data. That is a case study of your own life. The 2026 landscape is also seeing a massive surge in regional community foundation money. These are the gold mines that most national YouTubers ignore. These foundations manage hundreds of individual scholarship funds established by local families and businesses. The potential outcomes here are incredible because the competition is limited to your specific county or city. For example, the Cleveland Foundation or the Silicon Valley Community Foundation manage millions of dollars that must be given to local students. The application process often involves one single portal that matches you to dozens of different funds. But there is a catch. The deadlines for these local foundations often fall in January and February, long before you know where you are going to college. This is where the early velocity method becomes vital. If you wait until you have your financial aid award letter from a university, you have already missed the deadline for the very money that could have made that university affordable. As we move forward in this masterclass, we are going to look at the exact mechanics of the recommendation letter hack. Most students ask for a recommendation letter and hope for the best. That is a losing strategy. In part 3, I am going to show you the exact document Marcus gave to his teachers that basically wrote the letter for them, ensuring his recommendations were filled with the specific keywords and data points that scholarship committees are trained to look for. We will also dive into the secret negotiation letter that can be used to leverage one university's scholarship offer against another to increase your total funding. If you think the first offer you get is final, you are leaving thousands of dollars on the table. Most people treat the letter of recommendation like a passive checkbox, a polite request they hand off to a busy teacher or counselor while hoping for the best. In the 2026 scholarship landscape, where admission and funding rates have become increasingly decoupled, this passive approach is the quickest way to lose a 5-figure merit award. Imagine if you could essentially write your own recommendation letter while still maintaining total academic integrity. This is not about ghostwriting. It is about providing the architect with the exact bricks and mortar they need to build a monument to your potential. Take the case study of Sarah, a senior from Austin, Texas, applying for the highly prestigious University of Texas 40 Acres Scholarship in early 2026. Sarah knew that her AP Calculus teacher, Mr. Henderson, was writing letters for 45 other students. Historically, teachers in high-volume districts often fall back on templates that use generic adjectives like hardworking, diligent, and a pleasure to have in class. These words are the kiss of death in a scholarship committee room because they are non-quantifiable. They do not help the committee justify why Sarah deserves $40,000 over the applicant from Dallas with the same GPA. Instead of just asking for a letter, Sarah provided Mr. Henderson with a recommendation strategy packet. This packet is a tool that leverages the cognitive ease of the recommender. Step 1 of this strategy is the anecdote index. Sarah did not just list her grades. She reminded Mr. Henderson of the specific Tuesday in November, when she spent 3 hours after school helping 5 other students understand derivatives, which directly led to a 15% increase in the class average on the midterm exam. By providing this specific verifiable memory, Sarah ensured that Mr. Henderson's letter moved from the abstract to the concrete. The potential outcomes for students who use this strategy are significant. When a scholarship reader sees a letter that cites specific data, like a 15% improvement in class performance, they perceive the applicant as a high-impact asset. In 2026, scholarship committees are looking for students who function as force multipliers within their communities. Step by step, your recommendation strategy packet should include a 1-page resume, a list of 3 specific classroom moments where you demonstrated leadership, and a section titled Alignment Keywords. These are the specific traits the Scholarship Foundation values, such as resilience, innovation, or civic duty. If the scholarship is for leadership, your recommender needs to know that so they can pivot their focus from your academic prowess to your organizational influence. But even with the best recommendations and a stellar profile, the initial financial aid offer you receive from a university is rarely their best and final offer. We have to talk about the secret negotiation letter, or what is technically known as the financial aid appeal or professional judgment request. In 2026, universities are facing what economists call the enrollment cliff. Due to lower birth rates 18 years ago, there are fewer high school graduates today than in previous decades. This means that for the first time in history, the student has the leverage. You are the buyer in a buyer's market. Imagine if you applied to two similar institutions, University A and University B. University A is your first choice, but they offered you $10,000 less in merit aid than University B. Most families simply sigh and assume they have to choose the cheaper option or take on more debt. However, historical trends in 2026 show that 50% of students who formally appeal their financial aid package receive an average increase of $3,000 to $7,000 per year. Over 4 years, that is a $28,000 swing just for writing one letter. Let's look at David, a student from Philadelphia. David received a middle-of-the-road offer from a private university in the Northeast. Instead of accepting it, he initiated the negotiation framework. Step 1. David identified the specific gap between his student aid index, which is the new metric that replaced the expected family contribution, and the actual cost of attendance. Step 2. He gathered a competing offer from a rival institution of similar ranking. Step 3. He wrote a formal letter of appeal to the financial aid office, not the admissions office. This is a critical distinction. The admissions office wants you, but the financial aid office manages the budget. The language of this letter must be professional, data-driven, and devoid of emotional pleading. David's letter did not say "I really want to go here, but it's too expensive." Instead, it said "I am writing to request a secondary review of my merit-based aid package based on a significant discrepancy between my institutional offers. I remains fully committed to attending your institution as my primary choice. However, the current financial gap of $12,000 creates a hardship that my family cannot bridge without significant private lending. Is there any flexibility in the university's discretionary funds or any secondary scholarships for which I might be considered? The potential outcomes here depend on your timing. You must send this letter after you have been accepted, but before the May 1st National Decision Day. This is when the university is most anxious to lock in their enrollment numbers to satisfy their board of directors. Case studies of successful negotiations in 2026 show that mentioning specific programs you plan to join at the university increases the likelihood of a successful appeal. By showing that you are already mentally on campus and ready to contribute, you make it harder for the officer to say no. Furthermore, we must address the 2026 shift in how schools handle special circumstances. If your family has experienced a change in financial status that is not reflected on the 2-year-old tax data used by the FAFSA, you have a legal right to a professional judgment review. This includes things like high medical expenses, a parent's job loss, or even the cost of supporting an elderly relative. When David's father saw a reduction in his commissions in early 2026, David didn't just hope for the best. He provided documented proof of the income shift to the university. This triggered a manual override of his financial aid file, resulting in an additional $8,000 in need-based grants. This is the level of depth required to win the funding game today. You cannot be a passive participant in your own education. Whether it is engineering the perfect recommendation through a strategy packet or leveraging competing offers through a formal appeal, you must treat your college funding as a business transaction. The universities certainly do. They use complex algorithms to determine the exact minimum amount of aid they can give you to get you to enroll. Your job is to disrupt those algorithms by proving that you are worth more than their initial calculation. The strategy of negotiation is not just for the elite. It is a vital survival skill for the American middle class in 2026. As the gap between the wealthy and the low-income narrows in terms of aid eligibility, the middle class is often left with the highest net price. Negotiation is the only way to level that playing field. But how do you find the smaller, local scholarships that the university doesn't even know about? How do you bypass the automated filters that many scholarship foundations are now using to scan your essays before a human ever sees them? In Part 4, we are going to dive into the hidden web of local funding and the AI detection shield. I will show you how to find the money that is hidden in plain sight, literally in the newsletters of local nonprofits and small-town foundations that don't even have a functioning website. I will also break down the 2026 update on how to write essays that pass through the initial AI screening algorithms used by large-scale scholarship providers. If you are using standard phrasing, you are being filtered out before you even get a chance to be heard. We are going to make sure your application is the one that forces them to take notice. To navigate the landscape of 2026, you must recognize that the digital world has become a crowded room where everyone is shouting the same thing. If you are using the same search engines and the same keywords as the other 5 million high school seniors and college students in the United States, you are essentially competing in a lottery with astronomical odds. To find the funding that others miss, you have to look where the digital crawlers cannot go. This brings us to the concept of the invisible ledger. The invisible ledger represents the hundreds of millions of dollars in localized, highly specific funding that is managed by organizations that haven't updated their digital presence in a decade. These are the small-town foundations, the local fraternal orders, and the family estates that prefer to operate via physical mail and local reputation. Consider the case study of Elena, a student from a small town in rural Ohio in early 2026. Elena had a solid but not extraordinary academic record. She knew she couldn't compete for the national-level scholarships against students with international accolades. Instead, she spent 3 days at her local public library and the county courthouse. She wasn't looking for books. She was looking for the names of local trusts. She discovered the Miller Family Agricultural Trust, a scholarship fund established in the 1970s that was specifically designated for students from her township who intended to study environmental science. Because this trust had no website and was only advertised via a faded flyer in the basement of the local town hall, Elena was one of only 2 applicants. Potential outcomes for students who adopt this boots-on-the-ground approach are significantly more favorable because the applicant-to-award ratio is often 10 to 1 rather than 10,000 to 1. The step-by-step framework for uncovering these local gold mines starts with the Chamber of Commerce. In 2026, local businesses are more invested than ever in keeping talent within their communities to combat the urban brain drain. Visit your local Chamber of Commerce and ask for a list of member businesses that offer educational grants. Many small to mid-sized law firms, construction companies, and dental practices offer $500 to $2,000 scholarships for local residents. While these amounts seem small, historical trends show that stacking 5 of these is far easier and more reliable than winning one major national award. Next, you must utilize the physical mail advantage. In an era where scholarship committees are inundated with thousands of digital forms, a physical, high-quality envelope landing on a trustee's desk is a powerful pattern interrupt. Imagine if you are a trustee for a local Rotary Club. You receive a hand-signed letter from a local student who has taken the time to research the club's specific history of community service in the town. That personal touch creates an immediate psychological bond that a digital portal simply cannot replicate. Elena used this exact method, sending 5 physical portfolios to local organizations. 4 out of the 5 responded, and 3 resulted in interviews. This leads us to a critical development in the 2026 application process: the AI Detection Shield. As we move deeper into this year, almost every major scholarship provider, including the large-scale institutional ones, has implemented sophisticated large language model scanners to filter applications. These scanners are programmed to look for the hallmarks of AI-generated content: uniform sentence length, a lack of specific sensory details, and an over-reliance on platitudes like passion for learning or making a difference. If your essay is flagged with a high AI probability score, it is often discarded before a human being ever sees your name. To bypass these filters, you need to employ a technique we call sensory specificity. AI is excellent at summarizing general concepts, but struggles to replicate the messy, idiosyncratic details of human experience. Imagine if you are writing about a leadership experience. An AI might write, "I led a team of volunteers to clean up a local park, and we learned the importance of teamwork." To a human reader and an AI scanner, this is invisible. Instead, you should write, "At 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, the smell of damp earth and diesel exhaust from the city's garbage trucks filled the air as I handed out high-visibility vests to 14 shivering sophomores. Our goal wasn't just to clean the park. It was to remove the specific invasive honeysuckle that was choking the creek line." By including specific times, smells, and technical names of plants, you provide the AI scanner with hyperplexity data points that it recognizes as authentically human. Historical trends in 2026 admissions data show that essays with high sensory detail scores have a 40% higher chance of advancing to the interview round. Case studies of successful applicants from the fall 2025 cycle reveal that the most effective essays were those that felt slightly unpolished and deeply personal, rather than those that were grammatically perfect but emotionally sterile. Furthermore, you must understand the impact scoring algorithm that many foundations now use. In 2026, Merit is being redefined as the ratio of resources provided to results achieved. A student from a wealthy school district with a 4.0 GPA and a private tutor is seen as a lower return investment than a student from an underfunded district with a 3.6 GPA who managed to launch a community recycling program with zero budget. When you are writing your descriptions, you must quantify your constraints as clearly as you quantify your achievements. If you work 20 hours a week while maintaining your grades, that is not just a job. It is a data point proving your high operational efficiency. Step by step, when you are filling out the activities section of your applications this year, use the Problem Action Result Metric (PARM) formula. Do not simply list your title. Problem. Our school's robotics team had no funding for the 2026 regional competition. Action. I designed a sponsorship prospectus and pitched it to 5 local tech startups. Result. We secured 3 corporate sponsors and $4,500 in funding. Metric. This was a 200% increase in our annual budget from the previous year. This level of detail forces the scholarship committee to see you as a professional grade asset. They are not just giving you money for school. They are investing in a proven producer of results. Imagine if you could see the internal spreadsheets of these organizations. They are looking for students who minimize risk. In the current economic climate of 2026, scholarship foundations are terrified of awarding money to a student who might drop out or fail to make an impact. Your job is to use your application to de-risk yourself. You do this by showing consistent, long-term commitment to a single niche rather than a scattered list of 20 different clubs. As we conclude this deep dive into local funding and AI proofing, you have to realize that finding the money is only half the battle. Once you find it and pass the filters, you have to win the room. In 2026, the scholarship interview has moved almost entirely to a hybrid model, combining asynchronous video submissions with live virtual panels. If you treat these like a standard Zoom call, you are already behind. In Part 5, we are going to master the video essay and the virtual interview. I am going to show you the specific lighting and audio setup that signals professionalism to a committee, the 3-part storytelling framework that makes you uninterruptible during a live panel, and the secret of the portfolio of evidence that you should be screen sharing to visually prove your claims. Most students wait for questions. I am going to show you how to lead the conversation so that by the time the interview ends, the committee feels like they are the ones who need to convince you to accept their money. This shift in power dynamics is the ultimate key to securing the highest value awards available this year. In 2026, the scholarship committee is no longer just reading your life story. They are watching it. With the proliferation of video-first applications, your ability to command a digital frame has become as critical as your test scores were a decade ago. Let us look at a case study involving Chloe, a student from Seattle who is targeting a competitive $50,000 tech leadership scholarship. Chloe realized early in the application cycle that her paper application was nearly identical to 300 other finalists. To secure the funding, she had to master the video submission. This is the stage where most students fail because they treat the camera as a barrier rather than a bridge. Step 1 in the video submission is the technical baseline. Historical trends in digital media show that viewers, including scholarship judges, attribute higher levels of authority and intelligence to individuals with high-quality audio. If your voice is thin, echoey, or competing with a hum from an air conditioner, you are subconsciously signaling a lack of attention to detail. Chloe invested in a simple $20 lavalier microphone that clipped to her shirt, ensuring her voice was isolated and rich. She also avoided the common mistake of filming with a window behind her, which creates a silhouette effect that makes the face unreadable. Instead, she used the 3-point lighting system. This involves a key light placed at a 45-degree angle to her face to provide the main illumination, a fill light on the opposite side to soften the shadows, and a backlight to separate her from the background. In 2026, you do not need expensive equipment for this. 2 desk lamps with 5,600K daylight bulbs and a well-positioned window can achieve professional results that signal to the committee that you are a serious candidate. The content of your video must follow the 3-act high-retention hook. Most students spend the first 20 seconds of their video saying, "Hello, my name is Chloe, and I am a senior at West Seattle High." In the high-speed evaluation environment of 2026, those 20 seconds are a wasted opportunity. Chloe's video started with a result-first hook. She held up a prototype of a solar-powered water filtration system she built and said, "This device provided clean drinking water to 40 families during the August power grid failure, and it cost less than $50 to manufacture." By leading with the impact, Chloe created an immediate open loop in the judges' minds. They had to keep watching to find out how she achieved that result. This is the difference between telling someone you are a leader and showing them the evidence of your leadership. This leads directly into the live virtual interview, which remains the final gatekeeper of high-value awards this year. Imagine if you are sitting in front of a panel of 5 executives from a major foundation. They have been on virtual calls for 6 hours. They are fatigued. They are looking for a reason to zone out. To keep them engaged, you must master the lens focus technique. Most people instinctively look at the faces of the judges on their screen during an interview, which makes them appear to be looking down or away. Chloe placed a small sticker of an arrow right next to her webcam lens. By speaking directly to that sticker, she created simulated eye contact with every single judge simultaneously. This psychological connection is one of the most powerful tools in a virtual setting, as it signals confidence and directness that is often missing in digital interactions. Step by step, when you are asked the inevitable "tell us about yourself" question, you should use the past, present, future framework. Chloe did not just recite her resume chronologically. She spent 30 seconds on her past, specifically the curiosity that led her to engineering, 60 seconds on her present, highlighting the specific problem she is currently solving in her community, and 30 seconds on her future, explaining exactly how the scholarship will enable her to scale that impact at the university level. This framework keeps the narrative tight and ensures you are always moving toward a goal, rather than just listing past achievements. However, the real game changer in 2026 is the portfolio of evidence. In a live virtual interview, when a judge asks about a project or a skill, do not just talk about it. Show it. Chloe had a folder of high-resolution images and a short 10-second screen recording of her software in action ready to go. When asked about her technical skills, she asked, "May I share my screen for 10 seconds to show you the data visualization I created for the City Council?" This move shifted the interview from a passive interrogation to an active presentation. It proved that Chloe was not just claiming skills. She was demonstrating them in real time. Historical trends in 2026 admissions and scholarship data show that students who use visual aids during virtual interviews have a 65% higher success rate in the final selection round compared to those who rely solely on verbal descriptions. Another critical element is the reverse interview strategy. At the end of every interview, you will be asked if you have any questions. Most students ask, "When will I hear back?" or "How many people get the scholarship?" These are low-value questions that do not differentiate you. Chloe used this time to lead the panel. She asked, "I noticed in your 2025 impact report that the foundation is shifting its focus toward sustainable urban development. How does the foundation see its scholars contributing to that specific goal over the next 5 years?" This question proves that Chloe has done her due diligence. It positions her as a partner in the foundation's mission, rather than just a recipient of their funding. It makes the committee feel that they need her as much as she needs them. Potential outcomes for students who master these virtual dynamics are transformative. We are seeing case studies of students who were ranked in the bottom half of the finalist pool based on their test scores, but who vaulted to the first position because of their performance in the video and interview stages. In the 2026 economy, communication and digital presence are seen as leading indicators of future success. The scholarship committee is not just looking for the smartest person in the room. They are looking for the best representative for their organization's brand. To be that representative, you must also understand the concept of de-risking. Every scholarship award is a gamble for the foundation. They want to know that if they give you $100,000, you will graduate and do something noteworthy. Chloe de-risked her application by discussing her backup plan. She explained how she would continue her project even if she did not get the award, but showed exactly how the award would act as a catalyst to make the project 10 times more effective. This signals a level of grit and persistence that is highly valued by donors. As we move deeper into this masterclass, we have to address the reality that even the best interview performance will not save you if you are applying for the wrong scholarships. You can be the most impressive candidate in the world, but if the foundation's goals do not align with your specific profile, you are wasting your time. This is where the gold list comes in. In the next part, we are going to look at the specific high-yield scholarships for 2026 that most students are completely ignoring. We will break down the exact categories, from the obscure trade-specific funds to the massive state-level grants that are currently under-applied. We are also going to look at the specific 2026 deadlines you must hit to ensure you are not fighting for the leftovers in the summer. If you have been focusing only on the big-name national scholarships, Part 6 is going to change your entire strategy and show you exactly where the less congested paths to funding are located. The less congested paths to funding in 2026 are not hidden because they are secret. They are hidden because they require a level of specific alignment that the average applicant is too lazy to pursue. This brings us to the first entry on our 2026 Gold List, the Professional Association Scholarship. Most students think of scholarships as something awarded by schools or massive charities. In reality, some of the most consistent and underapplied for funding comes from the professional organizations that represent specific industries. These organizations are currently in a state of demographic panic. In 2026, as the baby boomer generation continues its mass exit from the workforce in fields like civil engineering, surveying, and specialized nursing, these associations are desperate to fund their own replacements. Take the case study of Jordan, a student from Michigan who decided to major in land surveying. Jordan realized that while everyone was fighting over the same 10 general scholarships on a major search engine, the National Society of Professional Surveyors was offering multiple awards specifically for students in his field. Because this required a very specific major and a student membership in the association, which cost Jordan only $20, the pool of applicants was incredibly small. In historical trends observed over the last 3 years, professional association awards often see a 50% lower applicant rate than general merit awards. Jordan didn't just win one. He won 3 separate awards from regional chapters of the same organization, totaling $12,000. Imagine if you spent 3 hours researching the professional organization for your intended career path. If you want to be a mechanical engineer, you should be looking at the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, or ASME. If you are going into hospitality, you look at the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Step by step, the process for this involves identifying the primary national association for your major, checking for regional or state-level chapters, and looking for their student membership portal. Often, the scholarship is only listed inside the member-only area, which is why it stays under the radar. These organizations don't just give you money. They provide a potential outcome of immediate mentorship and networking that can lead to a job before you even graduate. The second category on the Gold List is the trade and technical pivot. In 2026, the cultural narrative has shifted. We are seeing a massive influx of funding for what used to be called the blue-collar sector, but is now increasingly high-tech. The Mike Rowe Works Foundation has been a pioneer here. But in 2026, corporate giants like Caterpillar and John Deere have expanded their own scholarship pipelines. These are not just for diesel mechanics, they are for students studying autonomous systems, precision agriculture, and industrial robotics. Case studies of students in these programs show that their net cost of education is often near zero because of the scarcity of qualified applicants. If you are willing to look at the technical applications of your degree, even if you are a business or computer science major, looking at trade-focused foundations can yield significant results. Next, let's analyze the geographic isolation strategy. This is the art of finding money that is restricted to your specific, small-scale location. Many families in 2026 are looking at the state level, but the real money is often at the county or municipal level. There are thousands of legacy trusts in the United States that were established decades ago to fund the education of students from a single specific zip code. For example, in 2026, the Cleveland Foundation manages hundreds of individual scholarship funds, some of which are only available to graduates of specific high schools within the city limits. Imagine if you lived in a town of 10,000 people. There is almost certainly a local community foundation or a local bank that serves as a trustee for an estate left by a former resident. These funds are often not indexed by Google. Step by step, you need to visit your local bank's trust department or the website of your county's community foundation. Look for the phrase restricted funds. These are scholarships that cannot be given to the general public and must be awarded to someone from your area. If you are the only person who applies, the potential outcome of winning the full amount is statistically high. We also have to discuss the state-level high-demand grants of 2026. Many states have moved toward a model where they essentially subsidize any student who goes into a field with a documented labor shortage. In Washington state, the Washington College Grant has expanded to cover not just low-income students, but middle-income families as well, provided the student is pursuing a high-demand field like cybersecurity or healthcare. In 2026, Virginia and North Carolina have implemented similar programs. These are often entitlement grants, meaning if you meet the criteria and the state has the budget, you are awarded the money without a competitive essay process. However, the catch is the deadline. Historical trends show that state-level funding is often first come, first served. If you submit your application in April, you might find the coffers empty, even if you are perfectly qualified. This leads us to the off-cycle strategy. The vast majority of scholarship applications are submitted between January and March. This creates a bottleneck where committees are overwhelmed and competition is at its peak. However, there is a whole world of scholarships with June, July, and even October deadlines for the following academic year. These are often overlooked because students are either celebrating their graduation or are already in the middle of their first semester. Case studies of successful off-cycle applicants show that by applying during these quiet months, you are often being evaluated by a committee that is much less fatigued and more willing to engage deeply with your story. To maximize your results on the gold list, you must also look at the heritage and affinity category. While general ethnic scholarships are well known, the 2026 landscape features highly specific affinity groups that most people don't think to search for. Are you a descendant of a specific military unit? Are you a member of a specific religious denomination that has a regional credit union? Do you have a documented history of involvement in a hobby like ham radio or competitive equestrian sports? The American Radio Relay League, for instance, manages multiple scholarships for licensed ham radio operators. These are high-value, low-applicant awards because the barrier to entry is a specific, verifiable skill or membership. Data from the 2025 to 2026 academic cycle indicates that students who diversify their scholarship portfolio to include at least 5 of these gold list categories – professional, trade, geographic, state level, and affinity – increase their chances of receiving at least one external award by over 300% compared to those who only apply for the top 10 national scholarships. It is a matter of spreading your risk and identifying where your personal data points align with a niche pool of money. But even after you find the money and win the awards, there is a dangerous trap that catches thousands of students every year. It is called scholarship displacement. This is a practice where a university reduces the amount of institutional aid they give you because you won an outside scholarship. If you win a $5,000 award from a local foundation, and the university simply takes away $5,000 of the grant they were going to give you, you have effectively gained $0 for all your hard work. In Part 7, we are going to dive into the dark art of award letter analysis and the anti-displacement maneuver. I am going to show you exactly how to read the fine print of your financial aid offer to see if they are planning to displace your hard-earned money. I will give you the exact script to use when calling the financial aid office to request that your outside scholarships be applied to your student loans or your room and board, rather than reducing your university grants. We will also cover the 2026 update on the Student Aid Index and how to spot errors in the university's calculation that could be costing you thousands per semester. If you don't know how to protect the money you win, you're just working for the university's bottom line. To protect the thousands of dollars you have worked so hard to secure, you must first understand the predatory mechanism known as scholarship displacement. Imagine if Maria, a diligent student from Phoenix, spent her entire senior year applying for local awards. In early 2026, she finally receives a $5,000 check from a local Rotary Club. She is ecstatic, believing her tuition gap is finally closed. However, when she logs into her university student portal, she realizes her institutional grant, the money the college was giving her directly, has been reduced by exactly $5,000. In this scenario, Maria has gained nothing. Her hard work essentially functioned as a subsidy for the university's own budget. This is not a rare occurrence. Historical trends show that nearly 50% of private scholarship recipients experience some form of displacement. In 2026, universities are operating under tighter margins than ever before, and they often use external scholarships to offset their own financial commitments. This is legal, but it is often negotiable if you know the terminology of the financial aid office. Step by step, the first thing you must do is identify your cost of attendance or COA. This is a number set by the school that includes tuition, room, board, books, transportation, and personal expenses. Under federal law, your total financial aid cannot exceed this COA. If you win a scholarship that pushes you over that ceiling, the school is required to reduce something in your package. This is called an over-award. The strategy for Maria and for you is to influence what exactly gets reduced. Most schools will instinctively reduce the gift aid first because it saves them money. You must intervene and request that the external scholarship be applied toward your self-help aid instead. Self-help aid includes your student loans and your work-study requirement. By asking the university to replace $5,000 in high-interest loans with your $5,000 scholarship, you are actually improving your long-term financial position. Case studies of successful appeals in 2026 indicate that students who use the specific phrase "I request that this outside award be applied to my unmet need or to reduce my self-help component rather than my institutional grants" have a significantly higher success rate in preserving their total funding. Furthermore, we must conduct a deep dive audit of the 2026 Student Aid Index, or SAI. This metric has fully replaced the old expected family contribution, and the transition has created several points of friction that you can exploit. One of the most significant shifts in 2026 is the removal of the sibling discount. Historically, if you had a brother or sister in college at the same time, your financial responsibility was effectively halved. Now the SAI calculation treats each student in a vacuum. If you are a family with multiple children in higher education, your SAI might look much higher than your actual ability to pay. Potential outcomes for families who ignore this change are often devastating. But there is a path forward through the professional judgment process. If your SAI does not reflect your family's reality due to the sibling rule change, you can submit a formal appeal based on the updated 2026 guidelines for special circumstances. You must provide the financial aid office with the award letters and tuition bills of your siblings. While the federal formula no longer automatically accounts for this, individual financial aid officers still have the discretionary power to adjust your institutional aid to compensate for the discrepancy. Imagine if you looked at your 2026 FAFSA submission summary and saw a number that seemed impossibly high. Before you panic, check the asset reporting section. A major change this year involves the inclusion of small business and family farm values, which were previously exempt. If your family owns a small business with fewer than 100 employees, that value is now calculated into your SAI. However, case studies show that these valuations are often based on outdated or generalized market data. By providing an independent appraisal or a more accurate profit and loss statement, you can trigger a manual override of your SAI, potentially qualifying you for the maximum Pell Grant, which in 2026 has reached historic highs to keep pace with inflation. Another trap to avoid in your 2026 award letter is the front-loading of aid. Many universities will offer a very generous scholarship for the freshman year to secure your enrollment, but the fine print reveals that the award is non-renewable or has a GPA requirement so high that 60% of students lose it by their sophomore year. You must scrutinize every line. If a scholarship is labeled as a one-time award, you are looking at a massive financial cliff in year 2. Step by step, you should email the admissions office and ask for the historical retention rate of that specific scholarship. If they cannot or will not provide the data on how many students keep that award for all 4 years, you should treat that money as a temporary discount rather than a permanent solution. Now let's look at the hidden costs that often go unmentioned in the sticker price. In 2026, the cost of digital course materials and lab fees has skyrocketed. Many award letters only provide a generic estimate for books and supplies. Maria, for example, found that her engineering labs required specialized software licenses costing an additional $1,200 per semester. To account for this, you must look for the line item titled Indirect Costs. If your university is underestimating these costs, your COA is artificially low, which means you hit the aid ceiling sooner. You can appeal to have your COA increased by providing receipts for these mandatory educational expenses. This higher ceiling allows you to keep more of your external scholarships without triggering displacement. The 2026 landscape also demands that you understand the negative SAI. For the first time, students with extreme financial need can receive an SAI as low as negative $1,500. This does not mean you get a check for $1,500, but it does act as a flag for universities and private foundations that you should be prioritized for emergency grants and supplemental funding. If you qualify for a negative SAI, you should be checking for the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or FSEOG. This is a little-known pot of money that is given to the school to distribute to their most at-risk students. It is first come, first served, so if your SAI is in the negative range, you must ensure your application is submitted the very day the FAFSA opens. To protect your money, you also need to manage the timing of your private scholarship checks. Some foundations will send the check directly to the school. This almost always triggers the displacement process. If possible, ask the foundation if they can send the check directly to you, or if they can defer the payment to a summer session or a study abroad program where your expenses might be higher. Historical trends show that many foundations are willing to be flexible if they know it helps the student avoid losing school-based aid. Everything we have discussed so far, the displacement maneuvers, the SAI audits, and the negotiation scripts, requires you to have a centralized system of documentation. If you are relying on your memory or a disorganized inbox, you will miss the deadlines that govern these appeals. You need a master funding tracker that lists every award, its renewal criteria, and the specific displacement policy of your chosen university. But even with the most protected funding, there is one more level to this game. There is a way to stack your scholarship so that you aren't just covering tuition, but you are actually generating a surplus that can be used for professional development, research, or even starting a business while in school. In Part 8, we are going to explore the high-level strategy of scholarship stacking and the summer pivot. I will show you how to find the awards that are specifically designed to be stacked on top of existing full-ride offers, and the secret of the year-round application cycle that allows you to keep the money flowing even during the summer months when most students have stopped looking. If you thought the hunt ended in May, you are missing out on the most lucrative window of the entire year. The myth that the scholarship hunt ends on May 1st is one of the most expensive misconceptions in the American higher education system. If you believe that once you have chosen your university and submitted your final deposit, the window for funding has slammed shut, you are essentially leaving thousands of dollars on the table for the taking. In the 2026 academic cycle, the data is staggering. Historical trends indicate that approximately 70% of scholarship applicants stop their search the moment they receive their high school diploma or their initial financial aid package. This creates a massive vacuum of competition during the months of June, July, and August. We call this the summer pivot, and for the savvy student, this is when the real stacking begins. Imagine if you are Liam, a sophomore at Georgia Tech in the summer of 2026. Liam did everything right in high school, but he still had a $5,000 gap between his financial aid and the true cost of attendance, which had spiked due to local inflation in the Atlanta housing market. Instead of taking out a high-interest private loan in June, Liam initiated the summer pivot. He realized that while high school seniors were focused on graduation parties and freshmen were focused on orientation, the continuing student scholarships were sitting largely unnoticed in the university's internal database. The first pillar of the summer pivot is the continuing student portal. In 2026, most major universities have moved away from a unified application and toward departmentalized funding. This means the College of Engineering, the School of Liberal Arts, and the Department of Chemistry all have their own private pots of money. These awards are often not listed on public search engines because they are reserved strictly for students who are already enrolled and have completed at least one semester. Liam went to the Georgia Tech internal portal in mid-July and found the Endowed Engineering Scholarship for rising sophomores. Because the application was due on July 15th, a date when most students are not thinking about school, the applicant pool was less than 20 people. Potential outcomes for students like Liam are incredibly favorable in these scenarios because the committee is often struggling to find qualified applicants who actually hit the deadline. The second pillar involves what we call the August Scramble. This is a phenomenon where small, local nonprofits and community foundations realize they have reached the end of their fiscal year with leftover scholarship funds. If a local Rotary Club or a regional credit union budgeted $20,000 for scholarships but only awarded $15,000 because of a lack of qualified applicants, they often scramble to distribute the remaining $5,000 before their books close for the year. In August 2026, Liam contacted 3 local organizations in his hometown that he had previously applied to. He didn't ask for a new scholarship. He simply sent a professional update letter. He detailed his first-year GPA, his involvement in a new robotics club, and his commitment to finishing his degree. One of the organizations responded by awarding him a secondary $2,000 grant from their remaining discretionary budget. This is a step-by-step maneuver. Identify local organizations with late fiscal cycles, send a proactive update, and express a continued need for funding as an established student. But finding the money is only half of the masterclass. We have to talk about scholarship stacking. This is the advanced art of layering awards so that you aren't just covering tuition, but you are effectively being paid to attend university. In 2026, we are seeing a rise in what are called stipendiary awards. These are scholarships that are not sent to the school to be applied to tuition, but are sent directly to the student for professional development. Case studies of successful stackers show that they target 2 different types of money. Type A is institutional money that covers the fixed costs of tuition and fees. Type B is outside money from corporations like NVIDIA, Adobe, or Boeing, which are increasingly offering microgrants in 2026 for specific student projects. Liam targeted an NVIDIA research grant in August of 2026. This was a $3,000 award designed to help a student purchase high-end computing hardware for a specific AI modeling project. Because this money was designated for equipment, it did not trigger the scholarship displacement rules at his university that we discussed in the previous part. Liam was able to stack this on top of his existing merit aid. The result was a net surplus. This brings us to the concept of the refund check. When your total aid, including your stack scholarships, exceeds your bill for tuition and housing, the university is required to issue you a refund check for the difference. Historically, students who manage their stacking correctly can use these checks to cover their off-campus rent, their groceries, and even their transportation costs. This is not about getting rich. It is about achieving a debt-free lifestyle by treating scholarship hunting as a year-round career. To be successful in stacking, you must also master the renewal management system. Many of the scholarships you win as a freshman are renewable, but they are not automatic. In 2026, foundations are becoming more rigorous with their check-ins. If you fail to submit your spring semester grades or a brief impact report by the summer deadline, you lose the funding for the next year. Liam maintained a simple spreadsheet with 3 columns: the scholarship name, the renewal requirement, and the proof of impact. Every June, he would proactively send a 1-page report to every donor who had ever given him money. This report didn't just show his grades. It told a story. He included a photo of a project he worked on and a brief note about how their investment was paying off. This level of professional communication ensures that your donors feel like they are part of your success, making them far more likely to continue their support or even increase it in subsequent years. Furthermore, we must address the 2026 trend of corporate-led summer residencies. Companies have moved beyond the traditional internship and are now offering summer-long residencies that include a housing stipend and a scholarship for the following semester. If you are a student in a STEM, business, or creative field, your summer should be spent applying for these hybrid roles. For example, a student who secures a residency at a firm like Tesla in 2026 might receive a $10,000 summer salary plus a $5,000 scholarship applied directly to their fall tuition. This is the ultimate form of stacking because it provides immediate income while reducing future debt. Imagine the peace of mind you would have if you knew that while your peers are taking out loans for their sophomore and junior years, you are actually building a surplus. This is possible for any student who is willing to look past the May 1st deadline. You must realize that the university experience is a 4-year financial marathon, not a 1-year sprint. By adopting the summer pivot and the stacking framework, you are positioning yourself as a professional student who understands the value of their own narrative. As we look toward the final stages of this masterclass, we have to deal with the inevitable consequence of winning big. When you start stacking 5-figure awards and receiving refund checks, you are going to encounter the one entity that most students completely forget about: the Internal Revenue Service. Most people assume that scholarship money is always tax-free. In 2026, that is a dangerous assumption that can lead to unexpected bills and penalties. In Part 9, we are going to dive into the tax implications of scholarship wealth. I am going to show you the exact difference between qualified and non-qualified educational expenses, how to report your refund checks so you don't get flagged by the IRS, and the secret of using the American Opportunity Tax Credit to put even more money back in your pocket. If you are winning the scholarship game, you need to know how to keep what you win. We will break down the 2026 tax codes for students so you can navigate your success without the stress of a government audit. Imagine if you are Mia, a junior at a university in Ohio in 2026. After following the strategies we have discussed, Mia has become a master of scholarship stacking. This year, she secured $35,000 in total funding, but her university's tuition and mandatory fees only amounted to $20,000. In September, the university issued her a refund check for the remaining $15,000, which she used to pay for her off-campus apartment, a new laptop, and her daily commute. Mia feels like she has won the game, but when tax season arrives in early 2027, she is hit with a massive realization. The IRS views a significant portion of that $15,000 as taxable income. Without proper planning, Mia could end up owing thousands of dollars in back taxes that she has already spent. This is the hidden complexity of the scholarship masterclass that most creators ignore. But understanding the 2026 tax code is the difference between keeping your funding and losing it to a government audit. To understand how the IRS treats your money, we must look at the historical distinction between qualified and non-qualified educational expenses. Under the current tax laws in 2026, Scholarship money is only tax-free if it is used for qualified expenses. Step by step, these include tuition, mandatory enrollment fees, and books, supplies, or equipment that are strictly required for your courses. This means that the $20,000 Mia spent on her tuition is completely tax-exempt. However, the IRS has a very specific and narrow definition of what does not count. Non-qualified expenses include room and board, travel, research, and clerical help. Even though Mia needed that $15,000 refund check to live and study, the IRS treats that money exactly like a salary from a job. Case studies from the previous tax year show a recurring pattern of students being surprised by the kiddie tax. If you are under the age of 24 and a full-time student, your taxable scholarship income may be taxed at your parents' higher marginal tax rate rather than your own lower rate. This can lead to a significant tax bill. For Mia, if her $15,000 refund is taxed at a 20% rate, she is looking at a $3,000 liability. The potential outcomes for students who do not set aside a portion of their refund checks for taxes are often severe, including penalties and interest that compound over time. However, the 2026 tax landscape also offers powerful tools to offset this liability, most notably the American Opportunity Tax Credit, or AOTC. This is often described as the government's own scholarship. The AOTC allows you to claim a credit of up to $2,500 per year for the first 4 years of post-secondary education. The historical trend for this credit shows that it is calculated as 100% of the first $2,000 in qualified expenses and 25% of the next $2,000. What makes the AOTC particularly valuable in 2026 is that it is 40% refundable. This means that even if you owe $0 in taxes, the government could send you a check for up to $1,000. Now let's look at the Advanced Coordination Rule, which is the ultimate tax hack for 2026. This is a strategy used by professional tax planners that can significantly increase your net funding. Imagine if Mia's scholarships were all unrestricted, meaning they could be used for either tuition or room and board. If Mia uses all $35,000 for tuition, she pays zero tax, but she also cannot claim the AOTC because she has no out-of-pocket qualified expenses. If Mia strategically elects to treat $4,000 of her scholarship as taxable income used for room and board, she suddenly has $4,000 in qualified tuition expenses that she paid for out-of-pocket. By doing this, she may trigger a $2,500 tax credit. Even after paying the tax on that $4,000, her net gain could be over $1,500. This is a complex maneuver that requires precise record-keeping and a deep understanding of the 1098-T form. Step by step, you must learn to read your Form 1098-T, which your university will provide by January 31st. Box 1 shows the payments received for qualified tuition and related expenses, while Box 5 shows the total amount of scholarships or grants processed by the school. If Box 5 is greater than Box 1, you likely have taxable income. In 2026, the IRS is using improved AI matching algorithms to compare these forms against your personal tax return. If you do not report the surplus from Box 5, you are virtually certain to receive a notice of deficiency. To navigate this without stress, you must maintain a contemporaneous log of every educational expense. This means saving every receipt for every textbook, every lab kit, and every software license you purchase throughout 2026. If you are an engineering student who needs a high-powered computer for CAD software, and that software is a required part of your syllabus, that computer may be a qualified expense. By documenting these costs, you can reduce the amount of your scholarship that is considered taxable income. Mia saved over $400 in taxes just by keeping her receipts for a mandatory graphing calculator and specialized drafting paper. We also have to discuss the Lifetime Learning Credit, or LLC. While the AOTC is limited to the first 4 years of college, the LLC is available for an unlimited number of years, including for graduate school or professional certificate programs. In 2026, the LLC provides a credit of up to $2,000 per year, calculated as 20% of the first $10,000 in qualified expenses. Unlike the AOTC, the LLC is not refundable, meaning it can only be used to reduce the tax you owe to zero. For graduate students who are stacking scholarships and fellowships, the LLC is a vital tool for managing the tax implications of their stipends. Historical trends in 2026 also show an increase in state-level tax incentives for students. Many states now offer their own versions of education credits or deductions that can be stacked on top of federal benefits. For example, if you live in a state with a high income tax, You may be able to deduct a portion of your tuition expenses even if you already claimed the AOTC on your federal return. You must check the specific tax code for your state of residence, as these laws vary wildly across the U.S. The key to mastering the tax game in 2026 is anticipation. You should not wait until April to think about these numbers. Every time you receive a scholarship check or a refund, you should ask yourself, is this for a qualified expense? If the answer is no, you should move 15 to 20% of that money into a high-yield savings account designated for your tax bill. This prevents you from spending money that technically belongs to the government. As we approach the end of this masterclass, you now have the tools to find the money, win the awards, protect your aid from displacement, and navigate the tax codes to keep your wealth. But there is one final piece to the puzzle. Scholarship success is not just about the money you get today. It is about the legacy you build for tomorrow. In the final part of this series, we are going to look at the long-term vision. We will discuss how to leverage your scholarship status to secure high-level internships, how to become a mentor in the scholarship community to build your professional brand, and how to transition from a scholarship recipient to a scholarship donor. To turn these strategies into a reality, you must move from being a consumer of information to an architect of action. This requires the 12-month scholarship execution roadmap for 2026 and 2027. Imagine if you are Tyler, a student in the middle of his college journey in 2026. Tyler realized that the most successful applicants are not the ones who work the hardest in 1 month, but the ones who maintain a consistent, automated rhythm throughout the entire year. To replicate Tyler's potential outcomes, you must follow this month-by-month blueprint with clinical precision. June is the month of the Digital Repository and Heritage Audit. While your peers are taking a break, you are building your infrastructure. Tyler spent June of 2026 creating a centralized cloud-based folder system. He divided it into 5 core sections: transcripts and standardized tests, universal essay templates, recommendation strategy packets, proof of impact portfolios, and financial documents. In 2026, the speed of your response to a new scholarship opportunity is often the deciding factor. By having a digital portfolio of every project, news clipping, and volunteer log ready to be attached to a PDF, you cut your application time by 70%. This is also when you conduct the heritage audit we discussed in Part 4, interviewing older relatives to find every possible military, fraternal, or professional affiliation in your family tree. July is the season of the internal departmental sweep. As a continuing student, Tyler knew that his university's Central Financial Aid Office was only the beginning. In July, he began emailing the administrative assistants of his specific academic department. In 2026, these departments often have unpublicized endowed funds that are awarded based on faculty recommendations. Tyler asked a simple, high-value question. Are there any specific departmental scholarships for the upcoming academic year that have not yet reached their applicant quota? This one email led him to a $1,200 lab assistant grant that was nowhere to be found on the university's public website. August is dedicated to the re-engagement campaign and the update letter. This is where Tyler solidified his relationships with past donors. He sent a 1-page impact report to every organization that had given him funding in the previous year. He included a high-resolution photo of himself in his university's research lab, and a brief summary of how their money had directly impacted his ability to focus on his studies. Historical trends show that donors are significantly more likely to renew, or even increase an award, when they feel a personal connection to the student's success. By doing this in August before the fall semester begins, you ensure that you are at the top of their mind when they begin their next round of budgeting. September marks the beginning of the National Giant season. This is when the heavy hitters like the Gates Scholarship and the Coca-Cola Scholars Program open their initial applications. Tyler did not wait until the deadline to start these. He used the first 2 weeks of September to adapt his high-retention hooks and sensory-specific narratives that we mastered in Parts 2 and 4. The potential outcomes for those who apply early in this window include being invited to exclusive webinars and networking events hosted by these foundations, which can provide inside information on what the judges are looking for this year. October is the most critical month for financial compliance. The FAFSA and CSS profile launch. In 2026, the historical data is clear. Those who file their FAFSA in the first 48 hours of the window opening have a much higher probability of receiving state-level entitlement grants. Tyler had his parents' tax documents and his own income records ready by September 30th. He filed at midnight on October 1st. This is not just about the Pell Grant. Many institutional merit scholarships use the FAFSA filing date as a tiebreaker between two equally qualified candidates. November is the month of institutional priority deadlines. If you are applying to new schools or graduate programs, many of the most lucrative full-ride merit scholarships require your admission application to be submitted by November 1st or November 15th. Tyler targeted 3 schools where his profile was in the top 5% of their typical applicant pool. By applying early, he triggered the university's internal review for high-value fellowships that are not available to students who apply during the regular decision window in January. December is the local trust blitz. While the world is focused on the holidays, Tyler was at his local town hall and community center. As we explored in Part 4, this is when you look for the invisible money. Tyler spent his winter break reaching out to local law firms, small businesses, and community trusts. Because these organizations often have December 31st fiscal deadlines, they are highly motivated to finalize their charitable giving for the tax year. A well-placed physical letter in December can yield a quick response and a significant scholarship check before the spring semester begins. January is when you focus on state-level priority. Many states in 2026 have first-come, first-served grants for high-demand majors. Tyler checked his state's higher education portal every week in January to ensure his application for the state STEM grant was finalized. This is also the time to begin requesting your recommendation letters for the spring cycle, using the strategy packet we developed in Part 3. By giving your teachers and professors 6 weeks of lead time, you ensure that they have the mental bandwidth to write a truly standout letter. February is the month of the micro-niche and professional association sweep. Tyler spent this month searching the websites of every professional organization related to his major. As we saw in Part 6, these awards have very low competition. He applied for 3 separate awards from the state-level chapter of his professional engineering society. Because these applications required a specific technical essay, the pool of competitors was small, and Tyler was able to leverage the research he had already done for his classes. March is the negotiation window. As admission letters and financial aid award letters begin to arrive, you must activate the negotiation framework from Part 3. Tyler received his offers and immediately began comparing them. He drafted his formal appeal letters, citing competing offers and documenting changes in his family's financial status. In 2026, this is a business transaction. Tyler treated it as such, maintaining a professional and data-driven tone that resulted in a $4,000 increase in his institutional grant. April is for the anti-displacement maneuver. Once Tyler's external scholarships began to be confirmed, he made the proactive phone calls to the financial aid office that we discussed in Part 7. He ensured that his $5,000 local award was applied to his student loans rather than his university grant. By handling this in April, before the final bills were generated for the fall, he avoided the administrative nightmare of trying to claw back displaced money in the middle of the semester. May is the month of the donor appreciation and renewal lock-in. Tyler closed the cycle by sending handwritten thank you notes to every committee that had interviewed him, regardless of whether he won the award. This is the secret to building a long-term professional brand. In 2026, networking is the ultimate currency. One of the committee members who had rejected Tyler for a scholarship was so impressed by his professional thank you note that they offered him a summer internship at their firm. This is how you transition from a scholarship seeker to a young professional. This 12-month roadmap is the secret resource that ties everything together. But there is one final piece to this masterclass. The ultimate goal of this journey is not just to get your degree for free. It is to use the freedom that comes from being debt-free to build something that lasts. Case studies of former scholarship winners show that they go on to become the donors of the future. By following this roadmap in 2026 and 2027, you are not just funding your education. You are proving to yourself and the world that you have the discipline, the strategy, and the grit to navigate any complex system. You now possess the complete deep dive masterclass. You have the tools to find the money, win the room, protect your aid, and manage your wealth. The only thing left is the execution. The trillion-dollar student loan crisis only wins if you play by the old rules. But you know the new rules now. You are ready to turn your education into a springboard for the rest of your life. As you step into this cycle, remember that every application is a seed planted for your future self.